Mark, Ronnie. Yeah, it's great to have you here.
So nice to have you guys, as you're all here now.
Let's talk about Blind Guardian and about the first 4 albums.
So you have released your best-to-date album with Tales from the Twilight World. You're on a flow, and after that your record label went bankrupt. Fortunately, they had a distribution deal with Virgin, so you ended up on a major label in 91, 92. That's quite untypical, especially since Virgin didn't have that many metal bands. So can you tell us about how the contract situation was and why did you go with Virgin? And
we were very lucky in an unlucky situation. For us it was almost, we were unsatisfied with No Remorse before, because we had already the feeling that Tales had much more potential and he couldn't really make use of it because he was not focused anymore. He had, with the first 3 or 4 bands that he signed on No Remorse, he was successful. And then, in my opinion, his mind blew away and he signed more 20 bands and couldn't keep up with the work on all these bands. The attention each band got was smaller, and so the whole things didn't work anymore. The only things that was keeping the label alive was still the first 3 bands.
4.
Maybe 4.
Yeah, I mean, they were very successful bands. It was Grinder, Blind Guardian, Dimple Minds, which was a big thing then, and Heaven's Gate. 4 potentially really good bands, very talented, and they all had a run.
They all had a run, but Charlie was signing really like one band after the other, and he lost even the attention for these 4 bands.
But yeah, he revealed that he's going to be bankrupt soon, and he brought us in contact with Virgin. We spoke to Patrick Ort, who was the product manager for Toten Hosen back then, and we liked him. We liked the president of the company, and they were our first choice. At that point, we were the upcoming band, so we got plenty of offers, but after the first discussion, it more or less was obvious for us that we would end up with Virgin Records.
They knew our numbers from the Tales. They were impressed, and they saw that we had more potential, and especially Patrick Ort saw lots of potential in us and said that this could be the next generation of metal music. And they signed us, and from all of a sudden we were in a really cool situation on a major label.
And for Somewhere Far Beyond you had also more time in the studio. You spent 3 months there. And the album features also the first real classical approach with Theater of Pain and the first folk influences with the Bard song In the Forest. Do you remember where you drew these influences from?
We went freestyle as usual, and motivated by the Lord of the Rings, we of course knew that ballads would be an option. And when working in the studio, I came up with an opening pickup for the Bard song, and then the song just developed. And we had different ideas of using bagpipes. Back then, I cannot recall any band doing something like that, except probably for Skyclad, which went into such a direction. Maybe that was my influence, to go a little bit more that direction. But for you guys, it might have been something completely different.
I think with the bagpipes, I remember that we were working on Somewhere Far Beyond, and I had a lead guitar that was from the melody, and because I was using one string, I kept the D or something all the time while I was playing another melody over it, and it had somehow bagpipe approach on the lead guitar, and I thought, wow, why not really let the bagpipe play this melody? And I knew my dad is a jazz musician and his friend is playing bagpipe, and I asked him if it was possible that he could join us in the studio, maybe bring a bagpipe and jam a little bit on the song, and he was immediately said, yes, that's so cool, and I would love to do heavy metal. So yeah, he joined us in Hamburg, and it was technical wise from the tuning, it was a little bit tricky to accomplish, but I think he did quite a good job, and we established somehow a complete new genre.
And I remember when we did the Bard song, when we did the actual recording, color created a huge problem because back then we were playing to a click track, the tempo of the click track was set to the tempo that we needed in the first half of the song, but then came that middle section, and we wanted that to be slower. And he said, no, you can't change the click. That's the click. You have to play that in that speed. And it was like, that's not going to sound good. What? That's the tempo. You have to play it like that. So we ended up recording it the way it is on somewhere, but it's not the way we wanted it to be. It was how we played it live and re-recorded it later, but Kalle insisted. There's no way of changing that. You can't change a click tempo.
There were several problems with Kalle in this production, because I remember him fighting with us all about the lead guitar and your unreleased lead guitar in Somewhere Far Beyond in the outro part and your outro vocals.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was impossible for Kalle to bring it in balance. It was like, if there are lead guitars, he has to shut up, or if he wants to sing, his fucking lead guitars need to shut up. And we said, that cannot be, we need to make both listenable, no? That was such a fight that he later left the recording room and said, I will get back if you guys decided what to do. And he left the room, and that's it. You know, and we were like, that cannot be. Do you remember this?
No.
Yeah, but there was many situations
Maybe
like
because
this.
I won.
No, it's both there. We won.
Oh, okay.
So we had already our mind setting about how to create music and how Blind Guardian should sound. And we really liked that all these melodies were going together somehow. And we only didn't know in such a good way how to combine everything. It's more organic nowadays, but you need a certain learning process, and that was the first steps we did. And Kalle, he has a mind setting, he's thinking in schemes. Everything has to be accurate on click, or everything has to be in D-dur, whatever. He always has his mind view, and he cannot have a vision a little bit more to this side or a little bit more open to this side. It's impossible for him. And I think Somewhere Far Beyond, we were already musical-wise, from our understanding, far ahead. And he was already the wrong producer, in my opinion. That was already the album too much with him. Tales was still nice, perfect, a really nice speed metal album. But Somewhere is not a pure speed metal album anymore. Somewhere is the first step to improve with other styles, to have more variety, bard song, theater of pain, all these experiments. And Kalle was not open to experiments. He wanted to keep trademarks and keep the same thing. So he would be perfect producer for bands like Motorhead, who didn't want to change the sound. But we wanted to change the sound, so we had only discussions during Somewhere Far Beyond, many fights, and in the end I felt like it was unproductive and not so creative. He was more blocking us than featuring us in the end. The album came out good anyways, because we are strong characters, we fight for our things. And
So you were on a major label back then, and back then major labels always tended to put out ballads from metal bands as a single to get more airplay. So do you remember why the Bard song In the Forest was never released as a single?
Because of the opposite. In our case, they did not believe in the Bard song. That's as easy as it is. We recommended it because we believed in the potential, and I don't know if they thought it was old-fashioned or it was not suitable, but they didn't see it. They refused to release a single. I think we also considered Theater of Pain sort of mainstreamish hit because it has had little savage attitude, and we believed that could be something attractive to people. Again, they refused to do a single. They just didn't believe in it. And to a certain extent, it might have been good for us because therefore we were considered an album band, and the album did very well, and we still were kept away from the far mainstream, at least in Europe. It was more than just an underground success. It was a small mainstream success, and that made the difference for us because we still could progress, hidden somehow.
Yeah,
In Japan it was different.
let's say we didn't complain so much about that situation because, on the other hand, the Virgin didn't tell us to write a singer. And that was our fear, that someone could interfere with our music style and tell us to be more commercial, because that's not what we wanted. We wanted to keep the option to even go back to speed metal whenever we feel like, or thrash, whatever. Virgin was really giving us complete 100% free hand about the songwriting, and they released whatever we gave to them, which was a good point. And we knew from other major labels that that was not always the case. So we had a really great deal there with the Virgin Germany and these guys. They accepted us like we were, and they said that is our metal band, and let's see what we can do.
Yeah.
So we want to talk a little bit about the lyrics and the artwork of the album. So at first, please explain the concept of the time-traveling bards.
Well, I have to go back a little bit. They are nerds as well. I mean, especially Andrea and Markus. They are, diehard computer gamers. And over the years, when I came up with my ideas for stories and, all the book issues we have had, they revealed quite impressive stories from, computer games. And back in the days, I think it was in 1991, you guys played a game called The Bard's Tale. And this is how we came up with the idea about the bards in general. That was our first confrontation with minstrels or bards. And I, whatever they told me, and I cannot recall what it was, but I liked that idea. So we were playing around with the idea of, creating an overall album concept of time-traveling bards, medieval time-traveling bards, telling the stories of the album. Then I involved them into some of the songs and into some of the stories, which were not related to bards because they were, alien characters in there, to say so. And by doing so, we also started thinking about a visual concept. That's how we came up with the bards and the gathering somewhere in a dark forest, and that also took place in the song The Bard Song then, to a certain extent, when the bards tell the story of the Hobbit. So we mingled everything a little bit, and that turned out to be a smart idea and was a quite good concept, I think. There is, a lot which could have been combined, and it all makes sense to a certain extent.
Well, maybe it was the album that brought you international success for real. You toured Japan for the first time, for instance.
Yeah, for sure it made a big difference in Japan. And as mentioned, it was our breakthrough in a mainstreamish way in many European countries. Some countries started to get aware of us. That's also based on Somewhere Far Beyond. But the most significant success was the one in Japan. We went #1 in the charts. We did our first promo tour there, I remember. Then we were invited to play our first shows there, and that was maybe one of the craziest experiences we have made over all the years.
We only needed really to bring this good quality album to explode there, and we delivered, and it happened.
I remember the promo tour was packed. It was like, we didn't have any idea about Japan first. Your story.
My story. Okay. Again, we were young and innocent, especially me. I was very innocent and a little bit stupid at that day. We were invited for this promotion tour, and Hansi and me went to the airport. And when the girl at the counter asked for the passports, I told her that I would like to travel with my ID card. And I will never forget that look on her face when she was really thinking I was kidding with her.
I will never forget your expression.
My expression was like, don't do this to me. I want to go to Japan. and
He was
she
literally begging.
And she was becoming more and more serious and telling me, no, without passport you will not get into Japan, so we will not take you on the airplane. Bye-bye. And little tears ran over my face. And I said bye-bye to Hansi. I told him, Hansi, you go there, do everything you need to do. I will be with you tomorrow. And then, okay, I was at least smart enough to take some pictures at the airport. I went to the Düsseldorf embassy and told them that I would like to have a passport now. Again, these expressions on the faces. But I was somehow, I really wanted to go to Japan somehow. And somehow I was so confident that I would not leave that embassy without a passport that they gave in. And
the biggest achievement in the history of the band.
And they, they gave me that passport immediately, which was really, after they first told me it would take 3 months, they really could make it in 1 day. And and then, I flew with the next plane to Japan, and when I arrived I was already a star because everybody knew the passport story.
I created the story.
And Mr. Party Guy was already in a pretty good mood after doing 1 day party alone without me watching him.
And I went to the plane, and because he was not there, I sat right next to 2 Japanese old gentlemen, and I was so insecure I didn't even move the whole flight, I didn't even ask for a beer, and they were so polite to me, but it was, I was really overwhelmed, and he just did it for me. But then I arrived, and from that moment on it was like flying, and he, as he said, he arrived the day after. Luckily, Rage was playing a tour there, so I hung out with these guys for the first day and did a lot of promotion because the schedule was packed, and I mean packed. So we started around 10 in the morning and ended around 11 or 12 in the night, and it was really filled with, interviews, autograph sessions, face-to-face meetings with the business people in big stores, and there were all these old Japanese gentlemen, treating us like, samurais. So they were doing this, and, it was completely bizarre to us because they are so polite. We were young and innocent again. So he came, we did the first day in Tokyo. Second day, we were supposed to get up at 7:30. And neither of us was down there 7:30. Because 7:45 would do the trick, of course.
Because 6 o'clock we came out of the last bar open.
7:45 was good for us because, we always got late like 90 minutes, 120 minutes. So since it was Japan and we respected the culture, 15 minutes. We missed everything. We went to the train station, and we had reserved train tickets. We couldn't get our train anymore because everything was planned precisely. There was no headroom of 15 minutes. We learned that lesson the first day. It never happened again. Yeah. No matter when we got home and no matter how bad we felt, we've been there on schedule.
Yeah.
We were literally standing in the train somewhere in between the wagons, and there was no air conditioning, and we stayed there for 3 hours, I would guess, and it was like hell. So after that, we learned that lesson.
The whole schedule was even the regular schedule was planned in a way that we had to run sometimes in between to make it. And the Japanese can work really tough and really hard, and we needed a few days to adjust from our easygoing mode.
But there was no rest, It was so impressive. It was really so impressive. And these guys, they went out with us as well, but, they just have such a strong mentality, we figured.
I think in my whole life, I never slept less than these 2 weeks in Japan. It was, we were, the last days we were like being high because we only slept an hour per day.
It's also like a little bit in the movie Lost in Translation, when Bill Murray, is getting his moments in there. You feel like completely bizarre, especially in the 90s it was the case. So it was not a culture shock, but it was a really overwhelming situation.
Yeah.
And the same thing when we finally did the tour, everything was different. I mean, we were used to touring here, like you have a support band, you go on stage at whatever, 9:30 or something. Japan, no support, it's just us. Stage time, 6 o'clock. Which means that 5 minutes to 6, there's alarm bells in the backstage room telling you be on stage now and stuff like that. And it was like at 5:30 we were sitting backstage and we're playing at 6,000 people venue, whatever, and you didn't
they
hear
were-
anything.
And
It
they
was-
were sitting too.
Yeah, it was deadly quiet. You didn't hear anything, and we were like, you know, we're supposed to play at 6. When do you open the doors? Oh, doors are open. I said, what do you mean? We thought it's a sold out thing. Yeah, it's sold out. And we were sneaking on stage, looking behind the curtain. And there were 6,000 people on their seats, sitting, nobody talking a single word, nothing.
Completely quiet venue.
And the photo pit, there was no barriers. There were like 3 guys in suits with white gloves holding a line. And, you know, during the gig, the fans got up, but they didn't leave the area of their seat. They didn't move or anything. They didn't touch that line. It was bizarre.
The most bizarre thing, in my opinion, was that they would sing and scream and then they would applaud after the song. But when the applause was finished, there was quite a quiet gap.
Yeah.
And when Hansi was doing his introductions of the songs, it was so quiet that you could hear, if you would drop a pencil, you could hear it in the whole venue.
They are so polite, you know.
And it was so strange for us that we were used to small clubs and crowds that were completely going crazy and screaming all the time. And there it was so quiet that we were like, oh my God, did we do something wrong?
It was also on the first gig we played, there was like this catwalk into the audience. We played that show, and I think especially you, and we used that catwalk, and you know, on the next day, when we went to the venue, they were asking us, did you like the catwalk yesterday? I said, yeah, it was great. And they started building one into that venue because that one didn't have one. And they also found out that the 2 of us especially were big time into video games, and then on the next day, the backstage area suddenly had video game machines. And there was, we have room for you, and it was...
And I didn't know how to get on my drum riser because it was, I don't know, it had a height of 2 meters or something.
was very high,
something
yeah.
like that. And I was
Climb.
like, how to get up there? I said, no, wait. Stairs. In 10 minutes. Completely up. 2 meters. Incredible.
Also our crew was, we had our friends, our crew were with us, but they didn't have to do much. And we had, you know, this showing off backline. There were like 30 Marshall cabinets on stage or something like that. And, you know, we played the first gig, and the head of our crew came backstage like 10 minutes after we left the stage, and he was like, he was pale, covered with sweat. He was like, everything is gone. I'm like, what do you mean? Yeah, everything is gone. What is everything? All the backline. We're like, there were 30 Marshall cabinets. Where did they go in those 10 minutes? And there were like 20 Japanese guys running on stage, everybody grabbing a cab, running away, and they were clearing up everything in light speed. It was different.
Very different. I was lying. We missed another schedule, and that was the first show. 6 o'clock came, we were not on stage.
2 minutes later or so.
2 minutes later, 4 minutes later, because they pushed us that hard to go there, you know.
True.
And after the show, the product manager or the tour manager came to us and said, you don't do that ever again, otherwise you will fly home. Problem solved.
Yeah, we were in
Yeah,
time.
they are very accurate with numbers. I remember after the tour, we wanted to celebrate the sold out Japanese tour. And we were like, yeah, let's raise the glasses for the sold out show. And this guy who did the tour said, no, sorry, there's nothing to celebrate. There was like 15 tickets left. And we were like, okay.
True story.
Okay.
It was not sold out.